these silicone tubes are really slippery.
Just keep going, man. We're almost there to the hub. Don't worry.
Ow, my head! Ugh. Guys, the aliens are really getting into my thoughts.
Dude, stop. You've been going on about this all day.
Oh, hold on. Let's just hear him out this time. Bob 8, what are they saying?
They need us to go back down to the water purification platform on the Tugunma level.
The what?
Yeah, Tugunma.
Guys, it's a joke. Get it?
I get it.
Of course you get it. You're the one that wrote it.
Hey, what the hell?
Got him.
Welcome to Crew Expendable. I am a Grunt's wet dream, Hallstrom.
I am hard-ass rich man Rohrback. Wow, I fucked up my own last name. I'm going to take that one again.
All right.
I am hard-ass rich man Rohrbacher.
And I am really pissed off this time, Bob 8.
And we are just a bunch of climbers constantly finding footholds in the alien universe.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just me, or did they reference finding footholds like 87 times?
It happened a lot.
While they were climbing.
It happened a lot.
Yeah, okay. Bob, welcome back.
Hey, thank you for having me back.
What up?
Guys, it's Bob. Everyone, it's Bob from the Flock Podcast.
Yeah.
Remember him?
He's hanging out.
Yeah. Plug your stuff, Bob, before people shut this off.
I got a podcast. We talk about video game and etc. I know it's a novel concept for three white guys with glasses to talk about video games and anime and shit, but we're also doing it. I hope we can do it a little bit different than everyone else has ever done it, though.
Yeah.
And I also do some video game adjacent entertainment on twitch.tv/respectable street. If you go there on Friday nights, I'm goofing off.
Yeah, we've got links to those in the show notes as usual. That is workatmydadslawfirm.com and nastyfairy.com. Those will get you to the places.
Yeah.
I forget which one is which, but that's okay.
Doesn't matter. Hey, the GoDaddy emailed me just yesterday seeing if I wanted to also buy workatmydadslawfirm.net.
Ooh.
Did you do it?
No, I didn't. I don't think we need SEO like that.
Opening up GoDaddy. It was so much easier when Google domains was around.
Yeah.
And now they just sold everything to GoDaddy, and I got to deal with them now.
It's a shame because buying URLs was kind of your bit there for a while.
And I never got to see what Danica McKellar was up to.
It's true. You didn't. Unfortunately.
Is that reference going to work on anybody? Anybody remember that?
Well, I got it, so.
Okay.
It'll be a slim percentage.
Yeah, there's also a slim percentage that's going to stay in the episode.
Didn't she get weird lately?
Probably.
Hold on a second.
Are there allegations?
There was some controversy around her recently. I want to say it was like I'm thinking she's on some QAnon shit lately.
In November 2022, she wanted to set the record straight. Let's see what this is all about.
Very cool.
Longtime Hallmark actress Danica McKellar. Danica McKellar, is that... Hold on. Am I thinking of the right person?
No, you're thinking of the NASCAR driver?
Yeah, that's not Danica McKellar.
It's Danica Patrick.
That's Danica Patrick. Fuck. All right. That's who I was talking about.
That's who I assumed you were talking about, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I was wrong.
I mean,
We'll take that from the top. And I never got to see what Danica Patrick was up to.
Yeah, like I knew it was the wrong person, but I was like, it's fine. Like I knew he was talking, who he was talking about, and anyone out there that gets the reference will also know. So I'm not going to worry about it and just let him go off.
Danica McKellar, of course, the voice of Miss Martian in Young Justice. A good show. But we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about Alien Sea of Sorrows.
Hey, hold on. That was adjacent though, because she's been accused of promoting conspiracy theories through her podcast. June 2023, she was criticized for engaging in a discussion about alien involvement in human DNA.
Holy shit. Danica Patrick this time?
Yes.
Okay.
And in June of this year was involved with a discussion about reptilian shapeshifters leading to her being dropped from Sky Sports F1's broadcast team.
Cool. Wow. Everything's coming up, Danica.
So she's a peer and fellow podcaster. Got it.
Hey, Danica, Patrick, come on the show. Let's talk about a different kind of aliens. Alien Sea of Sorrows, Part 2, written by James A. Moore.
Indeed.
Do you guys remember anything from Part 1?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Let's hear it then.
So this freaking guy, he's been okay. Also, clarification: I'm doing the, I don't want to say the lazy man's way, but I'm listening to the audio drama
Yes.
and not reading individual words for this.
Bob will do anything not to read a book.
It's not so much that; it's mostly the ADHD has got a stranglehold on me,
Sure. I get it.
and reading a book is a tough one. But I've listened to the first 2/3 of the audio drama
Yeah.
about 4 different times now.
Nice.
And I get something new every time. Every time out of it.
This thing has layers, man.
So this part 1 kind of sets up our main character, why and how we are thrust into this mission to beneath the Sea of Sorrow, which is, I guess, formerly LV 426.
LV 187 or 178.
178. New Galveston.
Correct.
Yes.
Why did I think it was renamed? They renamed LV 426.
Well, they did rename LV 426.
Yeah, that was
I
just
know,
in a
but I thought that
different
was
book.
the same planet. That was no. So he's in an accident. He's in an accident, and when he is he's in a mining accident.
Yeah.
And through his rehabilitation aboard a Weyland-Yutani owned ship, we find out that he is a distant relative of the one and only Ripley, Ellen Ripley, who just happens to owe Weyland-Yutani billions of dollars.
Sure.
For the destruction of their mining ship, which you may recall from a movie, an old ass movie from the 70s.
Sure. So she's on the hook for the destruction of the Nostromo. Is she also on the hook for the destruction of the mining orbital from Out of the Shadows, Kenny?
I don't.
Just had the name and dropped it out of my head.
I don't remember either way if they brought it up or not, so I couldn't say for sure.
Okay. Sorry. So anyway, yeah, she hasn't paid her student loans.
They do mention the Auriga crash multiple times,
Right.
but not necessarily. I don't think they mention anything else. I think it's just the Nostromo and the Auriga that they have mentioned in the audio drama,
All
at
right.
least.
Okay.
And we found out that the audio drama is missing a lot of details that the book
So
fleshes out.
just real quick, it is, but also what's in there is very accurate to what's in the book. So they didn't take a lot of liberties. You know what I mean?
Right. They just don't.
Yeah,
they
they
leave things
didn't
out.
change stuff. They just removed stuff. I got you.
Yeah.
And I also found out that they do add some of those details in at later points, because in the audio drama they do add a little more detail on stuff we had talked about in the first episode regarding Decker, right? Is
Yeah.
his name?
Alan Decker. Yes.
Basically, Weyland, since he is a distant relative of Ellen Ripley, a couple generations removed, he is on the hook for this debt that Ellen Ripley has accrued by crashing the ship.
Right.
Therefore, he's kind of shanghaied on this planet.
Yes.
They're going to say, your kids are never going to see freedom unless you get us a alien specimen from this planet.
right.
Also, we find out that Deckard is getting these kind of ESP, not really visions, but like voices.
Yeah, kind of.
He's seemingly connected mentally through like brain waves to the aliens.
Right. In the book, he has dreams where he is one of the creatures. I'm not sure if that's how it's expressed in the audio drama or if he's just like hearing their thoughts or something.
It kind of seems like he's just hearing the thoughts. They don't really flesh that out a lot in the audio drama.
Right.
So he being not only a monetary asset to Weyland-Yutani, he is also kind of investigatively, like he is an asset for finding the aliens through multiple levels because he is mentally connected to them.
Yeah, but man, is he there to find the aliens, or is he there so that the aliens find them? You know what I mean?
I do.
Hey. And among this is a seemingly endless cast of characters whose names all sound kind of familiar.
There's so fucking many. Look, just up top, we're not going to keep it all straight. There's like 4 that matter, and the rest of them are just red shirts, right?
Yeah. And like when Neil says that there's 4 of them that are important, that's like maybe a 10th of the total crew.
Yeah, there's over 30 mercenaries on this mission.
Yeah.
And the way the audio drama does it distinguishes them in a very annoying way, where all of the male actors have like extreme dialects and accents.
Yeah, they do.
And all of the female voices, they just pan hard left and hard right.
Cool.
So it's very disorienting to listen to because you hear, like one guy have like the craziest like Chicago accent talking to someone who's like has never stepped foot outside of the Bronx.
Right.
And then from like the back of your head, you hear a female voice, and then from the opposite side, you hear the response in another female voice. It's.
I missed that because I was listening to this on a JBL 4, like a mono speaker.
Oh, the way it was intended.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm kind of an audiophile, guys.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of catches us up on the overall plot. I'm not sure where we left off in the first.
Yeah, so
where the first third ends.
I think when we left off, first, also, guys, we recorded that part 1 back in May, and it's now the end of July. So forgive us if we forgot some details. But I believe the way that the first part ended, chapter 15, I believe, they had arrived back on New Galveston. They had repaired the mining lift that was shut down in Out of the Shadows when Ellen Ripley and company destroyed that, and they had gone down 7,000 feet under the earth or under the planet, and had found the Drew Carthy ship.
Yep.
Yes.
That had been crashed there, that had all of these black silicon tubes growing out of it, and they were starting to climb the ship, I believe.
Yeah, they were specifically starting to climb the ship because Decker noticed like he got like his like ESP like empathy wave pulse of hate, which I refer to in my notes as his hate radar.
His hate radar.
He senses some xenomorphs like up the side of either the wall or the ship and inside of a tunnel like way up that you have to like climb up to. So they split into multiple groups, and one of them started climbing up to go get that tunnel, and that's where we left off.
Yeah. One other bit of information about Decker. He's specifically, I believe, a descendant of Ripley 8 somehow.
Yes.
Right?
That is correct.
Because we are post-alien resurrection, and that's where he's picked up this empathy, this empath ability to pick up specifically on the xenomorphs, because he must have a tiny bit of xenomorph blood in him still.
Yeah, that's presumably where he got the ability from, because he's a descendant of Ripley 8, who had the ability to mentally tap into the hive mind of the xenomorphs or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And they also describe when he first connected with the xenomorphs, because they didn't know that they were on New Galveston, right?
Yeah.
They described that as him having a seizure, which really made me feel seen.
Of course.
Yes.
And he in his accident or something, he bled, right? He got injured, and the blood went down one of the the black chutes.
Oh, right.
And it is, yeah, the book kind of implies that that's what, like, woke up this horde of Xenos that was, like,
Yeah.
in stasis for, like, 1,000 years or however long it's been since they were down there.
I think you're talking about the dead sleep.
I am, yes.
Yes, and they were like, "Oh, that's the blood of the destroyer. Let's get him or her." They think it's Ripley. I guess
They do.
They just know it's someone related, right?
Yes.
And they're like, "That's the blood of the thing that killed a whole bunch of us a while ago." You know, specifically this colony of xenomorphs. I think I mentioned on the last episode that I thought it was kind of silly that they like, can these xenomorphs just like tell when a Ripley's around? But I wasn't thinking about the fact that Ripley was on this planet dealing with this colony specifically.
Yeah.
So it tracks.
Also, I think we covered it in part 1, but did they find Ripley 8's body?
No, they find someone in the.
I mean the tapes. They find some like a.
I think they play the black box recording from the Nostromo.
Recording, that's what it is.
Yeah,
and that kind of talks about the medical tapes where she was in some kind of accident and then her memory was wiped.
Okay, so that might have been just us filling you in on what happened in Out of the Shadows, because in Out of the Shadows, Ripley gets picked up by the Marion. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah,
That's the orbital.
Yeah. I had completely forgotten until you actually said the word Marion, and then as soon as you did, I was like, "Yep, that's the one."
Yes.
Well, they do mention it in the audio drama because I listened to it yesterday when they mention it. It's the director. What's the director of the Weyland-Yutani of the ship? What is the ship called?
In this book, the Kiangia.
Kiangya.
Yeah, and it's Andrea Rollins.
Okay, so Rollins is going over the medical bay recovered tapes or whatever of all of her injuries, and then there's something in there about a like memory wipe.
Okay, so
thing that was performed.
Kenny, I don't remember us covering that in part 1. When they find the damaged med pod.
To be honest, I don't remember that happening in the novel version, so that may have been something they added, or maybe I just don't remember because it's been like 3 months since I've listened to it. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's worth talking about because I listened to that. I listened to the audio drama to catch up on part 1. Clearly, I did a great job of that. Mm-hmm. They do talk about finding a med pod. This was a med pod from the Marion that somebody was put inside. A woman was put inside, and then vivisected by it because Ash was in the Marion's computer system and used the med pod to murder somebody.
Yeah, that happens to one of the characters in Out of the Shadows. Yes.
Yeah. So in the audio drama, and maybe in part 3 of this book, or maybe we already read it. Andrea Rollins has somebody, like, they collect the med pod and they use an old operating system called Mother to access the records from it because it's still in okay shape. And I think that's when they learn about Ellen Ripley and all of the events of Out of the Shadows.
Yes.
So
that happens about midway through the audio drama. So I'm assuming that's if it's not in the book, then it's added for some flavor.
Because unlike you guys, I'm actually not listening to the audiobook. I'm reading the ebook of the actual book. I did not interact with the audio drama. I'm reading the actual book, and I don't remember that happening at all. But like I said, I may have just forgotten it when it did, rather than that meaning it wasn't in the book. I truly don't. I truly couldn't tell you either way.
Well, when I heard that, I didn't remember it happening either, but Dirk Maggs, the guy who directed the audio drama, also directed the River of Pain and Out of the Shadows audio dramas for Audible, and I believe those were released. This is the 3rd book in the Shadow trilogy, but I believe the audio dramas were released this is the 2nd book in the Shadow trilogy, but the audio dramas were released in a different order. It was released Out of the Shadows, and then River of Pain, and then Sea of Sorrows, the same order we're covering the books, kind of out of order. And he definitely added a few things into those to tighten them up as a trilogy, try to make them more connected. I think there might have been in the audio drama for River of Pain a reference to what happened on the Marion, even though Ripley doesn't remember it. It might have been in a computer log or something where someone was like, "Huh, this is weird. There was a moment where your ship was off course and blah blah blah." You know, just to try to tighten up the continuity. And they definitely dropped a Trimonite reference in River of Pain also.
They sure did.
Oh.
So that might have been a Dirk Maggs addition to, that might have been an expansion. Well, I guess we'll see when we read part 3 of this finally.
Yeah.
Because as I had said before, I think I've only listened to the audio drama of this, and only back in like 2016 or whenever it came out.
Yeah.
So it's been a minute. Yeah. I don't know. I think that catches us up though, right? We're back on. We're back here in
I think
we're all caught up on the plot.
The only other stuff that we had left out was prior to Decker and the mercenaries going down into the mining operation. Yeah, there was I want to say like an archaeological kind of smaller group of scientists that went down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They found evidence of, they couldn't access, but they found evidence of a like gigantic ancient city that was underground.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, it's funny you say that, because in the novel version, that happens during this section of the book, not the first section.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the audio drama is just, a lot of things are just out of order, I guess.
Some of them anyway, yeah.
I think so. For pacing, you know. All right. So for this section, as a reminder to everyone, we're splitting the book into thirds by page count, more or less.
Yeah, roughly.
So this section of, or this podcast will cover chapters 16 through 33. Mm-hmm. And, man, it's mostly just a lot of action, right?
Not a whole lot really happens plot-wise. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, this is the section of the novel where all of the different, like, disparate groups, you know, all of the just everyone is just finding xenomorphs and being attacked by them and trying to capture them and bring them back as a prize, right?
See, back in the day, a couple of years ago, I'm mainly telling this story to the listeners because, Neil, I'm sure you remember this. And Bob, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this on episodes before, so you may have already heard this story. So I'm mainly talking to the listeners. But back a couple of years ago, after we decided to start doing the show, but before we actually started doing the show, you know, we got the idea. We were like, hey, let's do a podcast about Alien. And I was like, okay, cool. At this point, I've pretty much only ever seen the movies, and I haven't really, like, I know there are novels, I know there are comics, I know there are games, but I've never really, like, interacted with any of them at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a couple of the novels. I'm going to pick a couple just like at random and then read them just to like see what the expanded Alien franchise, like what kind of stories they're telling and stuff. And so I picked 2 novels at random to just read, just to get my bearings on the franchise. And the 2 that I picked, like I said, completely at random, were Alien Echo and Aliens Sea of Sorrows. And Sea of Sorrows, after I was done, because I was listening to the audio book of them because I was listening to them at work, and after I was done listening to Sea of Sorrows, I was like, that story's not bad, but there's this huge chunk right in the middle of the book where I have no idea what's happening or what's going on or where any of the characters are, because it's literally just endless scenes of everyone running around back and forth in between, like, tunnels that all look identical and nobody has any idea where they are. And that was like my main takeaway of the novel. But then since that was a couple of years ago, I totally forgot about it. And then here we are, we're reading this story, and I'm reading the chunk of the novel I was talking about. And as I'm reading it, I'm going, oh shit, oh yeah, that's right. This is the part where everyone's just running around and nothing's happening for like 80 pages straight. Ah, shit.
Yeah, it kind of makes a little more sense in cinematic form, and when it's written out, it kind of gets very repetitive.
It sure does, because there is a scene where a group of soldiers they're at point A and they go, oh no, we need to flee, and so we flee to point B, and then they get to point B and they go, oh no, we have to turn around, we have to go back, so they go back to point A, and then they get to point A and go, oh no, we're blocked off, we have to go back, and then they turn around and go back to point B and then continue on from there. And I'm like, all that stuff in the middle could have just been taken out. It's fine.
I'm going to be the dissenting voice here. I had a great time reading this section. Honestly,
Well,
it's fun.
I was really feeling this.
I never said that I was bored. It's entertaining. It's just, it really could have used an editor. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I guess I won't argue with that point, but I thought that this was I thought this was fairly not easy to follow, because again, there's 4,800 characters, and they're all just like in groups of like 5 or 6, so we keep jumping around to different places. But I did think it was kind of interesting. You know, they built in this this idea that they're using like sort of outdated comms units because they want to, like, shortwave radio or something like that, because they don't want anyone, you know, from the New Galveston colony like picking up on what's going on, you know, because it's all classified Wayland-Yutani information. And then the downside of that is all of these groups keep losing connection to each other and don't really have any idea what's going on around them. So, you know, we'll read about one group encountering like a single xenomorph and putting it down and then getting flooded with a whole bunch of others. And then we'll cut to another group in a different location very far away, and a similar thing happens to them. And then we'll cut to another group who still have no idea what the fuck's going on, and are just like sitting around talking about how they hope they can find one of these things so they can, you know, get rich and get their bonuses. And then another group who's like, holy shit, there's a whole city here. Our bonuses are going to be through the fucking roof, you know? And just like, it was kind of interesting to see one group have no idea what's going on, one group being really hopeful that they're going to like score whatever these bug things are, while another group is literally being eaten by them, and none of them have any idea what's going on. I thought that was interesting, and a little different than what we normally see, right? Usually there's like one or two outsiders that don't know what's going on, but just I don't know. I was kind of digging this. I think around chapter 28, I was like, this might be my favorite out of this trilogy, this book.
Interesting.
And this is the one that I've been sleeping on the most.
We do get some, at least in the audio drama, we get some sprinklings of the of kind of the Wayland-Yutani like blackmail machine.
Yeah, we do.
Which I think is a good kind of breakup to just, you know, it's not just skirmish after skirmish. There's like a little more plot happening in between the action.
For sure.
Yes.
Is it Cho who calls Rollins and asks, is basically is like, hey, we're in over our heads. Like, I want to renegotiate our bonuses. So. And then that kind of gets flipped on him because Rollins is very much unwavering.
It is not Cho. Cho is one of the Marines operating the comms. The Wayland-Yutani suit guy that you're thinking of is Willis.
Willis. Okay. Yeah, there's so many fucking characters.
There are, and we're not going to keep them straight. And I apologize to the hardcore fans in the chat.
Speaking of how many fucking characters there are, there was kind of, I don't want to call it a running gag, because it's only a running gag to me, the reader, because I thought it was funny every time it happened, but I don't think it was intended to be comedic when it was written. But there's like a kind of a running gag that happens like 3 or 4 times over this section of the book, where like the group that Decker is with, will get attacked by xenomorphs, and like 3 or 4 of them will be killed. And Decker will be like, oh, like during the attack, like the narration will be like, oh, Decker watches some dude, the creature jumps out and like, uses its claws to gouge this guy's chest open, and Decker's like, and I didn't even catch what the guy's name was because there's just so many people. I didn't even learn everybody's name. And then every single time that happens, invariably later on during the scene, somebody will be like, oh, boss, we got 4 dead. And then he'll rattle off 4 names. So even when the character doesn't have a name when he gets killed, because there's so many of them, he didn't even meet all of them, we still later on even find out what their fucking name is by the end of the scene.
Oh, fuck. We lost Jenkins, Pinkett, and Slipdog.
No, Slipdog, no. He had kids.
There's one scene where straight up, like in the scene, somebody gets killed and then another guy gets killed, and that second guy, Decker, straight up is like some skinny guy. I never even learned his name. And then later on during the scene, one of the Marines is like, we got 2 dead, the first guy and Holbrook. And then Decker's like, Holbrook, that was the guy's name.
Well, I mean, in Decker's defense, he's pretty hyper-focused on Adams in this, isn't he?
And if you were introduced to like 50 different people in a 3-hour time span, would you be able to keep all of their names straight,
I barely know your guys' names.
Exactly, see? But anyway, going back to, I think it was Neil that said it earlier, other than Decker, there's pretty much only like 4 other major characters to remember, and Adams and Manning are 2 of them. Manning is kind of the CO, he's like the leader, because most of them are former Marines, but this is actually a group of mercenaries, not actual soldiers. And so Manning's like their leader. And then Adams is like the babe that has like mutual attractiveness to Decker. And
well, they hooked up, man.
They
hooked up
did,
on the
yes. And the other characters that are important, I can't remember which ones they are off the top of my head, but they, of course, pop up a whole bunch.
I mean, Cho is one of them. Detilio was leading one of the groups, right?
He sure was.
And I think he gets offed pretty quickly in this section. Actually, my first highlight about, or my first highlight in this, I think it's Detilio. It's someone working the camera, right? And he's filming this stuff, even though they're like, hey, don't film any of this stuff. And he's like, I'm going to send a copy of this to my sister. She's a forensic xenobiologist. This is a line about this guy thinking, this is what he's thinking about his sister. The line is, she made disgustingly good money. Still, he got laid more often. What the fuck? Like, what kind of brother-sister relationship is this?
I think okay. I am under the impression that what he was trying to say is that she might have a better paying job, but at least he's not a huge loser nerd like she is.
Maybe, but still, like, why is I don't know. That's his measure. Like, oh yeah, my sister's like a professional scientist and she makes a lot of money, but I fuck and she doesn't.
Hey, fair, It
was the first thing I had to highlight in this section.
Speaking of Detilio, though, the first chapter of this section, chapter 16, starts with him, who is the leader of a trio, Detilio, Rodriguez, and Joyce. And they are the 3 that were sent climbing up the side of the ship to, like, the big tunnel that Decker, was feeling hate rays from. And then they go in there, and Rodriguez gets killed, and then Joyce gets killed, and then Detilio gets killed. They just get swarmed by it. Well, I don't want to say necessarily swarmed, because I don't remember how many Xenos there are, but at least one shows up and kills all 3 of them.
There are a couple of times where it's like from the perspective of the mercenaries. They see something down a tunnel and it's moving and it rises and it looks like a piece of the tunnel rising. And oh shit, it has teeth. Let's put it down. And it'll attack and get one of them maybe, and they'll put it down, and then like a whole bunch more will show up.
Yeah.
That happened at least twice in this section. I don't know. I think that's kind of a fun detail because they're all reacting to it the same way. It's less of like lazy writing and more of like, hey, this is what it's like when a xenomorph shows up when you're on its turf.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're just like having the standard human reaction to that. Right. Mm-hmm. But their line, so damned many teeth, shows up a lot in this.
Yeah, they really focus on the teeth. There's multiple times where they mention the like crystalline teeth. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I don't know. It's I feel like most of the people don't get killed by getting bit. You know,
they generally don't. Yeah,
and a lot of people do get taken away in this to get nested up for the breeders, right?
Yeah.
So I think that works better for the smaller groups. I had this thought while I was reading this. I'm hoping someone can work up some artwork for me. You know how like whenever they describe the xenomorph and they describe the head that looks way too big for its body, and we all know what the xenomorph head looks like, where it extends back. Mm-hmm. What if the head, instead of being attached under the chin like a humanoid, what if the head was attached to the neck
at the back?
At the back.
Like an Elden Ring boss or something.
So like the head like extended forward off the body.
Yeah, so like the entire head just extended out and the face is just right there at the end for no reason.
Yeah. Do you think they'd be less or more scary?
I think that would be way more scary.
Well, I mean, it'll give them a lot better reach on their inner jaw bite. I'll give it that.
I don't know. I'd just like to see that, I think.
Hey, and while we're on the topic of art commissions, if I could get a Cooler Bot in a French maid outfit.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, Tom, get on
that. You got your homework.
But yeah, that's basically chapter 16. The trio of them get killed by xenomorphs. And then the next chapter is the one that Bob mentioned earlier. This is where in the book we're introduced to a Dr. Nigel Silas, which is a very funny name to me.
Yeah, when that came back later and they were switching between calling him Nigel and Dr. Silas, I was like, there's no way his name is Nigel Silas.
His name is Nigel Silas, yes. It's very funny.
But it is.
Him and...
They also,
go ahead.
They also insult the shit out of him. They call him Short Round several times
they do.
in the book.
They do call him Short Round a few times later. Yes, that's correct.
So, guys, if you want to take a guess on what this guy looks like, he is short and round.
But yeah, him and this babe, Colleen, are basically standing on like a balcony overlooking these like uncovered ruins of like this huge city. And he's talking about how like, some drones had been sent out to map the place. And they're getting reports back of some humanoid but not human, like mummified bodies that have been found that we know are the Drukathi, but I guess they're discovering for the first time. And he like excitedly announces that to Colleen that they're going to go down there and start excavating the city now that they've uncovered it. And that's basically everything that happens in this chapter.
Is that chapter where they send out the mapping drones also?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that chapter, as far as I know, is the first mention of the mapping drones. They will be referenced a whole lot in the oncoming chapters.
And we know I love a mapping drone.
You sure do.
Yeah, the Drukathi are not named in this, or they were not named in Out of the Shadows either, but they're another, like a vaguely canine humanoid species that show up in the Rage War trilogy.
Yeah, they're also really big. They're like human, or they're like dog-like humans, kind of like halfway between, but they're like 9 feet tall or something like that.
Yeah, they're gigantic. And apparently they grow their ships, right? Because this is a bioship that's not a juggernaut.
And I think they also have more than 2 arms. I think they have a second pair of arms, maybe.
Yeah, they might be like Goro.
But yeah, like Neil said, they grow their ships rather than build them. All their stuff is like biotech.
It's pretty dope. Now are we at the part where everyone's getting murdered?
Let's see. Chapter 18 is, first sentence of my notes. Decker and the rest of the mercs are just chillin'. Thanks, past me. That really helps me out. Let's see.
I think at that may be one of the points.
I think this is when Willis shows up and like tells them, "Oh, we just got a report from our doctor that they excavated a city," and then everyone starts rubbing their hands together and fantasizing about the big fat bonus they're about to get.
All their eyes turn to dollar signs, except Decker, who just owes the company a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Well, also at some point in one of these little like calm before the storm kind of vignettes, in the audio drama at least, this is where Decker explains that no, maybe it isn't Decker that explains it. Someone explains it to Decker that how Wayland Yutani like came to power, basically, of when the Auriga crashed into Earth and it like sent Earth into an ice age almost, that Wayland Yutani was able to terraform it and like capitalize on that.
Yeah, we learned that earlier in the novel.
Yeah, I was going to say, I seem to vaguely
on.
recall that in the novel that happened in the first episode that we did.
Right. So when you guys were talking about that, I was like, oh, I must have missed that because I didn't remember that at all. But no, it just happens later in the audio drama.
It is a very fun detail. I like that idea that Wayland Yutani, who had all of this terraforming equipment, right? That's how, that's what they were doing, was like, oh shit, we can save Earth. We can just put these here and basically privatize the climate.
Yep.
Right. And
Which
get
is
back
also,
on top.
Just timeline wise, it's tough for me because Wayland Yutani was a like global power corporate entity.
Yep.
And then by Alien Resurrection, they were basically non-existent.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I guess made their comeback terraforming Earth?
Yeah, they saw an opportunity.
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
They were just maybe the first to it, right? Since maybe because they didn't have the sort of reach that they used to have. They just had all of this stuff, unsold terraforming equipment on Earth, right?
Okay, yeah, that would
while
make sense.
everyone else was out in the far reaches of the universe or whatever. So they were like, "Oh shit, let's get these up and running and get ourselves back on top." Imagine if that line about them being bought out by Walmart had been left in Alien Resurrection.
Yeah,
these would be Walmart execs in this novel.
They sure would be.
We would be hearing about how Walmart saved Earth by terraforming it, and Andrea Rollins would be working for Walmart, right? I don't know.
But yeah, like I said, this is when they get told about like the big excavation happening. They imagine their bonus. And then the reports start coming in from the trio from the first chapter that they go missing. And so Manning starts to send everyone out, but then Willis freaks the fuck out and he's like, "No, some of you have to stay behind and guard me." So
I like this part.
So Manning's like, all right. And so he reconfigures it so that a handful of them stay back and the rest of them go to slightly different positions than they had been. And then there's a great conversation where Decker's like, "Wow, I can't believe Manning caved to what Willis wanted." And Adams is like, "He didn't, don't worry."
Yeah, she's like, actually, this is the same deployment we would have used anyway, but all Willis did was piss off Manning, so he's actually sending more people with the main group and leaving less people behind than he would have. So that was pretty slick. I liked that moment.
And then there's a brief cutaway, and we find out that, oh shit, turns out Detilio isn't dead. And we find out that he's not dead just long enough to see him get a face hugger and die via chest burster.
Yeah.
I think in the audio drama, unless I'm thinking of a different part, 2 people get captured. 2 people out of that group get captured and face hugged. But that might be different characters I'm thinking of.
I mean, there might be. I mean, I just notated down because every time a named character dies, and I remember to write it down, I write in my notes R.I.P. with their name, and then in my notes I wrote, "Oh shit, he's actually alive." Oh wait, no, he died, declaring a second R.I.P. on Detilio. So there may have been a second person that I just forgot to note in my notes. So.
Kenny's going to get all of their names tattooed down his arm.
And then chapter 19, very little actually happens. A group of some of the mercs head into the tunnel that Detilio and them disappeared from. They find a bunch of Rodriguez's blood all over the place. And then at the end of the chapter, Decker gets another like hate radar beam notification pop up on his screen, and he's like, "Oh no, they're coming fast and they're already close." And that's how the chapter ends. So nothing really happened there.
There were some fun lines in this. This is when I don't know, Decker has this moment where he describes his vision as the scent of the nightmares he's been suffering for months, which I thought was pretty nice writing there. But it goes on, like, is it possible to smell something in a dream? He had no idea. And I was like, all right, these are shower thoughts for sure. But this is also where he's facing off with Manning, I think. And Manning's like, come on, man, you got to tell us when these things are coming. You can sense whatever these fucking things are. And Decker's like, it doesn't work that way, man. I'm not a fucking bloodhound.
Yeah, he's like, this isn't just like a button I can hit and then it pings me, like it pings to me or whatever. Like, it doesn't work that way. And Manning goes, well, then fucking make it work that way, dude.
Yeah.
We also find out somewhere in this area that it is a two-way communication.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's when I sort of realized, like, oh, that between that and some of the Andrea Rollins stuff that's coming up, that's when I realized, like, oh, Weyland-Yutani's not putting him there to help them find the xenomorphs. Like, he's literally there to attract the xenomorphs to this mercenary party for whatever reason. Like,
and the reason why is something we find out in a few chapters, but I'm sure everyone both on the call and listening can probably guess what that reason is.
It's because Weyland-Yutani has a half planned plan again.
But yeah, we're not actually told in the text what that reason is for another couple of chapters. But But yeah, next up, there's this pretty cool scene. A group of Marines, I don't remember. It's the group of 5 of them. I got it written down here. Groff, Hunsucker, Blake, Juergens, and Connors. The 5 of them were sent around on foot to like walk around to the other side of the ship to investigate stuff. And there's this really fucking cool section of the scene where, like, while they're walking along, one of them keeps like noticing movement out of the corner of his eye and trying to follow it. And after this happens 2 or 3 times, he like finally like gets his light on it, and it's of course a xenomorph, and it's like out in the open, not even hiding, and it's just kind of like slowly like stalking towards them across the ground. And then he's got his light on it, and then like you can see it, like, you know, it's still lit up and it's continuing to slowly walk towards them. And as it does, the lights of the other 4 soldiers also shine down on it, but it keeps stalking up to them until finally it gets close enough to just jump on someone and rip them apart. And I was like, dang, that's actually really, like, I'm picturing that in my head, and I was like, that is a cool scene that would happen in a movie.
Yeah, and this is where, and then so they shoot the thing, and it bleeds on Connor's helmet, right? And someone's like, hey, you got some shit on your helmet, and he pulls it off, and it burns through the helmet, and he's like, damn, that would have burned through my head if I hadn't taken my helmet off.
It also notably burns through the comm unit on his helmet, which is why he's not able to call for help right away.
Yes, and they describe the acid as hydrogen fluoride, which I'm sure this isn't the first time that the composition has been named, but it's the first time I have paid attention to it.
But
Bob, that's what you use to clean grout, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
but
same here. You got to wear gloves, but
Are you supposed to?
Uh-oh.
You probably should.
But yeah,
As Bob holds up his stumps where his hands used to be.
but like with mice, with xenomorphs, you think you have one and you actually have 80. So they kill this one, and then a whole bunch of them come out of the walls, swarm all over them, and all 5 of them get killed. And there's a very cool scene where Connors is the last one of the 5 to die. And as he's getting killed, he's like being pinned down by a couple of Xenos, and then there's one like right over top of him about to, I think, bite him and kill him. I don't remember how the xenomorph kills him, but like it gets like right up close to him, and like right as he's about to die, he notices that inside the shiny dome you can see the human skull and like the empty eye sockets. And I was like, I'm glad they pointed that out, because a lot of people forget that they actually do have a skull under that dome, and you just generally can't see it because it's always in shadow, but there is a skull there. And it's cool to me that the author remembered to have him notice that,
100%. I highlighted that too because I thought that was rad as hell. I love the skull inside the head. Remember how in the Alien 3, the Gibson cut comic that we did, like the hybrids, like the skull was really, really apparent in those?
Sure do.
Yeah, I love that design. I think they had red eyes, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, I love when the skull makes an appearance. That's why the big chap from Alien is a better design than the Aliens ones with the ridges and everything.
Going on record, nice.
But it's a correct opinion. That's not a controversial take at all.
That's fair. That's fair.
This is also, I was thinking about this in reevaluating this scene in the context of something we get later in the book, where we are sort of in the perspective of the xenomorphs as they're like collectively, I don't know, just assessing their situation and how many years it's been. And they mention that, some of the xenomorphs don't survive the dead sleep. Some of them are weak from it and all of that kind of stuff. And I was thinking, like, this one that was just sort of crawling towards them out in the open, all of these ones that are sort of like the first xenomorph to show up amongst the group, are these like the older ones that know that they're going to die soon? So they're just like the front lines as the distraction?
I don't know. Could be. Good question.
They made it seem like they were in hibernation waiting for Decker almost.
Yeah, they're the book explains it that they're sort of hibernating. They still have like some food left over from the Drukathy corpses, and as long as they stay sort of in their dead sleep, in their stasis state, they'll be able to survive for a long time. They're sort of waking up because there's hosts around, and that gives them the chance to breed. So I feel like these sacrificial ones that sort of lead the charge are the ones that are probably a little long in the tooth, no pun intended. Trying to like be the bait or be the distraction so that they can capture the new hosts. I'm interested in xenomorph tactics, right? Because this book is really making me think that they have, like, this book gives us xenomorph thoughts from time to time.
Sure does.
And so I'm like, I don't know. It's just like, man, I wonder if they are like capable of strategy, I guess.
Well, we already know that they did shut down the lights in Aliens, so they're at least capable enough of doing those kinds of tactics.
They cut the power. Yeah. What do you mean they cut the power? They're animals, right? I think that's what he says.
An underrated, I guess maybe just a limit of the practical effects that just became like an iconic look.
Yeah,
is the doubled fingers.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that look.
There's a thing in this where they describe as these hands are reaching out. There's a moment in this book where the hands are reaching out. The xenomorphs are grabbing people, and it specifically says hands with 3 fingers and 6 fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a dope line. I was like, yeah, that's it, dude. They have 3 fingers and sometimes they have 6 fingers. This book gets it.
It's such a cool look.
It is. I like the stuck together fingers. It's very cool.
Does anyone else have anything else to add, or are we good to move on?
We can move on.
All right. Chapter 21, we cut back to the guys with Willis guarding the elevator. And Piotrowitz is hanging out with Willis when they suddenly get the SOS message that Jurgens sent in the last chapter that I skipped over because I forgot that it came back in this chapter. But yeah, he like sent out like a radio call for help, and then it cuts to here and they are getting the radio call.
Yeah.
So a bunch of them get sent out as backup, and on the way there they find a bunch of corpses that I believe are xenomorphs.
I think that they find some. These are Drukathi.
Yeah.
Oh, they're
corpses,
Drukathi. Okay. Well, they were described as like corpses of like creatures that they didn't really recognize that looked kind of
Right.
weird, and so since it's an alien story, I just kind of assumed they meant xenomorph corpses. But
no, they say they looked like a long-limbed dog.
but
so
I must have missed that line in the narrative. Then okay.
I guess that could still be a xenomorph technically.
Well,
right?
I
But
mean,
I got the impression it was
Like I said, I must have straight up missed that line, because if I had seen that line, I would have known that's what they meant. So I must have just not seen that or skipped over it by accident. But anyway,
maybe there's a third species.
they don't have the chance to investigate that any further because suddenly out of nowhere, a truck barrels up to them out of control and on fire and smoking and almost
Yes.
runs over them.
Yeah, is it? Is this the science team?
It is a truck that is, well, I believe it's described as like an armored vehicle, but it's effectively a truck that
Right.
has xenomorphs climbing all over
Yes.
it, and one of them is actively attacking the driver. And so as the truck drives by, this group of soldiers goes, "Oh shit," and picks off a couple of the Xenos while the truck drives by, and then the truck just barrels out of view, and that's the end of that, and it's also the end of the chapter.
That's right.
It just kind of barrels away, and that's it.
This next section, this is the Andrea Rollins. This is the sort of behind the scenes look at the Wayland Yutani fuckery.
Yeah,
right?
she is in a meeting. She calls in Eddie Pritchett, which for anyone
Yeah.
that doesn't remember, is in the last episode when everyone was coming in and landing on the planet in the first place, like on the drop ships and such. Pritchett was the pilot that pretended to fake turbulence as a prank on their way into the station.
Fucking rascal. Look at this guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she calls him in and she's like, I checked the reports and there was no weather, so I know that you were just fucking around. And if you don't get real professional about this, I'm going to ruin your whole goddamn family because I'll revoke your pilot's license. Your whole family, you guys rely so hard on these Wayland Yutani contracts. I will make sure you never get another contract ever again unless you're like just fucking perfect with next time you go down and the next time you come up, you don't fuck around. But she says it in like executive like speech where she's not throwing around F-bombs and shit like I am. Right.
For sure.
Another audio drama difference is that happens when they first get to the planet in the audio drama.
Okay. And I think that this might be also in the audio drama where she starts to learn about the med pod. I'm not positive. That might have been a later scene.
Okay.
But I don't remember this from the audio drama where we sort of learn that she has a special sort of data connection to everything that's going on down there, whether it's the mapping drones or if it's in the communications. Like she receives a special frequency back from all of the communications gear.
Yeah, she has like a computer built into her desk that basically every single stream of data coming out, like, you know, from like the soldiers' comms or the mapping drones or like any kind of like wireless communication that's being broadcast is essentially like duplicated and then also sent to her computer, and her terminal is like the only one that can like interpret and encode like the data built into it, and she's just keeping track of like everything, every single piece of information that comes out of the place,
including the location of the xenomorphs. Like
Yes.
whatever the drones are, whatever data they're collecting, like they're obviously not reporting back to the team on the planet the same stuff they're reporting back to her.
Yeah.
Because she's getting information on like where the xenomorphs are and everything. And not sharing it with the people on the ground responsible for bringing her back specimens for some reason.
Because she considers them expendable, and so they don't really need to know where.
Hold on.
Wait, are you saying that this crew is expendable?
What?
Okay, I'd like to point out specifically what I wrote in my notes. She then hijacks the data streams of all of the mercs, reminding the readers that she considers the entire team expendable. Shit, should have said crew there, not team. Fuck. That's literally what I wrote in my notes.
You could have just corrected your note.
After I wrote team expendable, I was like, I maybe could get a bit out of this if I just left it and then corrected it by writing more rather than deleting it. I figured I might be able to get a bit out of it, so here we are.
Welcome to Team Expendable.
And what is the order that she keeps referencing?
It's the same. I think it's the same order as for all the clone soldiers to kill the Jedi.
I was literally about to say it's Order 66, but then I let Neil continue to talk, and then when he did, I realized, oh no, that's the same reference I was going to make. Oh shit.
I don't remember the order number.
It's like 972 or something. It's
like Order 99. You just turn the Order 66 upside down.
Also, there's some Rollins stuff going on that I have a hunch about that I don't.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's very common for alien stories to have this twist, but I think.
Do you think she's a synth?
I mean, right? Like, there's always one, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that she might be a synth, right?
And she seems particularly heartless.
like cartoonishly heartless, right? And like, yeah, I think there's a chance. I don't know. I don't remember. I wouldn't be surprised, and I am not looking at her entry on Xenopedia because I don't want to know the answer.
Okay.
I mean, I listened to the whole audiobook, and I don't know if they ever flat out say whether she is or not, but it's giving me that vibe.
Totally. Yeah.
Just the way she has like a lot of kind of knowledge of things that she might not she shouldn't have knowledge of, just because she might be more tapped into the systems than a human would be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. She was giving me, though, a little bit, like, I thought the same thing, like, she's going to be a fucking robot. Like, the way she was talking to the pilot was very, it had that energy of, like you're saying the worst possible things you can to a human being, but you're not swearing, so you think you're morally better than them, right?
Sure.
But also, it was giving me, like, Vickers vibes from Prometheus a little bit. Like, I was picturing her as Charlize Theron, like, literally.
I got you.
Probably an Auton.
Right. I don't know if it's in the section that we're currently in or if it happens a little later, but she does retrieve the Ash
oh shit, that's a spoiler.
Data communication thing from the
med pod.
And she immediately gets like her demeanor changes when she hears that. When Ash is like, I've taken over this. I mean, at least in the audio drama, that's how it goes. But she gets all like cagey and weird, and is like immediately is like, triple encode this and remove it from all the system servers or whatever, and like gets really weird about it. So that was my first tip off of like, oh, maybe she knows, because she was only there with other Weyland-Yutani people. So it's like she wouldn't need to be that cagey about it if there wasn't something else going on.
Well, that whole thing with like Ash and stuff, that does not happen during this scene in the novel. And like I said, I don't recall if it ever happens in the novel at all. That might be a new addition. Like that, like subplot might be new for the audio drama. And as far as whether she is a synth or not, like I said, I've read this book already, so I do know the answer to that question.
Okay, we'll keep it to yourself, man.
Okay.
Also, nobody write to us at mother@crewexpendable.net and spoil it.
And I'd like to point out that me saying I do know whether she is or not, that is not necessarily a spoiler, because the answer is not quite as cut and dry as you might initially think it is.
They don't ever cut her in half and she has milk blood.
That does not happen, no.
Nobody type the answer into Bob's Twitch chat at twitch.tv/respectable street. I will say I am browsing just the differences between the novel and the audio drama on the Xenopedia article here, and I'm not seeing anything about Ash listed as a difference. So that must be popping up in the novel in part 3.
Okay.
Yeah. It might just happen later on in the novel then, and then I must have just forgotten.
Yeah, it happens about midway through the audio drama.
We'll figure it out. We'll get there, guys. Don't worry.
Let's see. The next chapter is the one where Decker and Manning and them get that same SOS message from Juergens. And then this is the scene that I mentioned earlier where skinny guy whose name Decker never got gets killed. And then later on, we're given that guy's name anyway. The other person that gets killed along with him is Garth, who's the really young, super skinny guy. And this was like his first mission or whatever.
Yeah, big blonde hair, glasses.
Really into drumming.
Yeah, that him and Decker did not get along at all. Garth, he's the other guy that gets killed in this scene.
Yeah, and Wayne could have saved him, but he was too busy playing Stairway.
Denied.
And there is a scene where they're all kind of... I was just brushing over that on purpose. They're in a big group, and there is a xenomorph that lands and starts wading through the group, but it's specifically making a deep beeline for Decker and trying to kill specifically Decker to the point where it's not even attacking the other mercs. Like, there will be like a mercenary there, and the xenomorph will literally just ignore him or like push him to the side and otherwise not even hurt him and just make it straight for fucking Decker.
I loved this. I love that they're just so obsessed with like, we got to kill the destroyer. If we kill the destroyer, we're fine, right? And we got to end this fucking bloodline so that our species can continue. And it's got real I Am Legend vibes.
And this xenomorph here is the one that they bust out the big, it's called a shocker in the book, but I consistently refer to it as a cattle prod in my notes. It's basically like a big electrical prong that you go zzz against something with, and they shock it a whole bunch until it passes out, and they think it's dead, and then they tie it up and start dragging it around with them.
Right. I like that Adams like cracked it in the head with her rifle, and then somebody else like kicks it in the face, and then they shock it. And I'm like, they're just beating the shit out of this xenomorph. It's interesting because, again, because it was so singularly focused on one target, it was vulnerable, right? Which is, again, making me think like this must be like one of the older ones, you know?
And this is also the first section of the book that I mentioned earlier, where this happened when they climbed up into that big tunnel and they were going through the tunnel, and then they get attacked by the xenomorph, so they have to turn around and flee back the way they came, and then they capture the xenomorph, and then after they get back to where they came, they discovered that the xenomorphs have resined off the hole they came through, and they're like, oh no, if we continue to go, it's obviously a trap. So they have to turn back around again and go back the way they came again for the second time in a row.
What do you mean they sealed off the tunnel? They're animals.
And so now they're going back up the tunnel, which they had already been doing when this chapter started.
Yeah, this was dope. And this is when like they think the xenomorph is out, but it wakes up as they're trying to like drag it down the outside of the thing, and then they just drop it.
Yeah,
they're like, fuck it, just drop it.
It wakes up and bites someone on the foot, and so they just go fuck it and just let go of it, and it falls down a crevasse or something.
Yeah,
and so they're just like, whatever.
But this is this the specimen that they get back? Like to the
they do get a hold of it later, although I think eventually it ends up breaking out, and it's not the one that they have later on in the book, I don't think.
Okay, because I'm a little unclear on that. I thought that they might have dropped it, because I thought that the group got separated here. Some of them got down, but then Adams was like, we got to go back up. We're not going out the same way we came.
That happens later.
Okay.
And the reason it might be confusing is because although that happens a few chapters from now, they're still in this same location when that happens, because this is the location where they keep going back and forth over and over and over again. This is where all that stuff happens.
It's a little hard to track because it's not like a lot of time has passing.
Yeah.
It's just we're just jumping around to all these different groups.
But next up, chapter 24 is when we're with the comm team trio, and
Right.
a van pulls up, and it's got the scientist, Nigel, Willis, the Wayland Yutani suit, and a handful of other mercs. They're getting reports that they have discovered xenomorphs at the dig site. And then suddenly, Piotrowitz and his group shows up with dragging one around that's already dead.
That's what I was thinking of.
And then
Right.
they argue for a little bit, and then we find out that Colleen is dead because she got a face hugger on her, and they're like, but then the face hugger fell off, so it's fine. And they're all like, let's go check out that body anyway. And
Extremely important information about the face huggers that was totally left out of the Wayland Yutani report.
Yeah.
Because that must be the real plan.
yeah,
Right?
for sure.
Yeah.
And when they go check on her body, they notice a huge exit wound of a bullet in the middle of her chest and go, oh no, she accidentally got shot. That must be how she died. And everyone else is like, oh yeah, that's definitely how she died. And I'm reading the book like, psh, losers.
Yeah, that didn't work on me because someone was like, wait, she was totally fine a little bit ago. She was just laying down in there and like, I don't know how it happened. It must have happened. Maybe we didn't notice it happened.
Yeah, they were
It was
like
a gaping wound in her chest.
Yeah, they were like, oh, there's a hole in her chest. She must have gotten shot. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Well, lucky for her, I guess, that she got shot before the chest burster bursted out. And then somebody goes, but wait a minute. None of us had any weapons and no one was firing any guns. And I was like, well, there's your fucking answer then, I guess.
Yeah, and they do have the deceased face hugger as well. So like, check it out. We got 2 specimens.
Yep.
We're gonna get so rich, guys.
And we find out that the chest burster has already come out of her body. And all throughout this chapter, we've been getting reports that there has just been various problems with the big cargo elevator. It works now, but like miners on other levels keep summoning it to use it. And then after it gets used a couple of times, it gets broken down again, and it's going to be like hours for it to get fixed.
Yeah. Because they're like, it's got to move equipment to the 4th level, then it'll come down here. Oh, bad news! They loaded too much shit on it, and it's broken. And
Wait, so are they at work right now?
There are still actively miners working in this mine. Yes.
Okay, they don't really expand on that in the audio drama.
Well, I think all of the levels that the mercs are on, I don't think there are any miners in. So I don't think there's any. I mean, there might be later on in the book, but in this section, they never run into any miners at all. So
no, the miners aren't allowed to come down. They're like 7,000 feet down.
Okay, I just pictured them doing army stuff while some like construction workers are carrying their lunches around in the background.
I believe at one point they say that like, the mercs are on the level of the mine that they've already like hollowed out and moved to other levels. So there aren't any miners like here.
Right.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, because some of this was talked about in Out of the Shadows, this was a trimonite mine that had a cave in, and that's when they discovered the Drukathi ship.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But then all the shit went bad, and they were able to get the lift all the way down to it, but like there were still active levels of the mine, like
higher
that they had
up,
been working on higher up. And then the trimonite mine got buried by Wayland Yutani, like in the paperwork, for centuries, apparently.
I was going to say it didn't literally get buried. It just got buried with paperwork. But then I remembered that I think in Out of the Shadows, they did literally bury it with explosions. So
I think so. And then when Alan Decker had his accident, like there was part of the CSR was caved in, and they discovered this trimonite mine that had been sort of lost to the sands of time. That
had been sealed off by Ripley like 300 or 400 years prior. Yeah.
And was it Willis who sold Decker out to Wayland Yutani? Or was it a different guy?
It was a different guy because Willis was not Decker's partner at the beginning of the book. It was Decker's partner whose name I can't remember.
Right. Guy who fingered a man.
A man who he loved and respected and cherished.
Yeah, there it is.
Anyway, this chapter 24 ends with them finding the corpse of the dead facehugger. And then somebody turns around to talk to Willis, and he is mysteriously vanished, which only spells out bad news because we already know there's a live chestburster on the loose.
Sure. Yeah, they built the drama around that chestburster pretty effectively, I think, with people having to go into the van and get equipment and go out and feel like there's something watching them. And I think Willis walking off to talk to Rollins, and they do sort of build the tension about when is this thing going to show up for like 8 chapters. Pretty effective.
Then there are 2 chapters that I'm basically just going to combine into one because it's the intro and then the actual real shit that happens. Decker's leading him through some more tunnels, and his hate radar keeps pulsing. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a xenomorph starts showing up and just charging down this line of soldiers, just cutting a path through all of them. And they're all like super, super packed in to the point where it's like everyone's like sweating and it's getting like, unbearably hot in there because everyone's packed in so tightly.
Sure.
And then this scene I remember very well from my first read through of the book. It was one of my favorite scenes. Like, all of the soldiers are packed in way too tight, and there is a xenomorph on one end just filleting his way through. And so the soldiers farther on down the line pull out their guns and start trying to fire at the xenomorph, and they're hitting it, but the acid blood is splashing out and killing people.
Yeah.
But because there are so many people packed in, even like stray bullets that the soldiers are fighting are like killing people closer to the Xeno. And I was like, damn,
dude,
that is rad as hell.
Good scenes. Good. This is like when the action really starts to ramp up, if I'm remembering correctly, at least for Decker and Manning's team, right? We're going to spend a lot of time with them. I got nothing else on these chapters. I probably got nothing else on the next few, honestly.
Yeah, this is also the scene where where we're told about a soldier named Kelso who kills this first Xeno, but then they get surprised by 3 more, and those 3 kill Kelso and 3 other soldiers, and they discover that the way that those Xenomorphs were able to get the ambush on him was there is a big hole in the ceiling that the xenomorphs were dropping out of, and so the soldiers crawl up that tunnel into the hole that is now empty, and that's where they're able to get away from the Xenos. And then Decker is finally given his own headset, and it's implied that it was taken off of Kelso's corpse.
Kelso's dying words were "clever girl," right?
Correct.
Jurassic Park reference, guys.
And then in the next chapter, we find out that Willis is fine. The whole reason he's disappeared, even though there's a chestburster loose, is because he just walked off to privately talk to Rollins and be like, look, we found a whole lot more information out here. How about we renegotiate our contract? And Rollins is like, hey, fuck you.
I mean, look, I know you said that he's fine, but are any of us really fine, man?
That's true.
Like, when you get down to it, are any of us really fine?
The next chapter after that is like 1 page from the Xenomorph's perspective of we see them watching somebody die via chestburster. It's like cool, but narratively it doesn't really give us anything we didn't already know.
No. But I fucking loved it. This is when I was like, this might be my favorite book of the trilogy here, honestly.
And it's funny you say that because earlier you said it's around chapter 28 when I had that thought, and that is chapter 28 of the book. So
yeah, I knew it was chapter 28.
Gotcha,
and like, it's not, look, I can't imagine how hard it must be to write from the perspective of xenomorphs. Right?
That's true.
Because I doubt the xenomorphs are literally thinking things like, as long as life prevailed, they would hunt the destroyer to keep the queen safe. Like, I doubt, like, a moment later, lifeblood flowed and the face of a newborn broke through. And like, these aren't words that a xenomorph would use, right? But these are words that a writer would use to describe a xenomorph's thoughts.
That's true. That's true.
And it worked for me, honestly. And learning about, like, calling it the dead sleep and all of that, and talking about how they've survived this long. I buy it. I don't know. It's a little cheesy, but I've said before I need a little bit of cheese in this stuff. Like, it can't take itself too seriously. Like, it needs to be over serious
I got you.
a little bit for me to be able to buy it, because I really want to know, like, James A. Moore was like, I want to, I feel like he spent hours on this one chapter, days even, you know, and it's literally like a page.
It sure is. I think it's one page. Yeah.
But I can feel the work he put into this, is I think what I'm trying to say. And I bought it. I don't know. I was like, yeah, this is what it's like to be a xenomorph, for sure.
My only hesitation is I guess I don't understand the xenomorph motivation.
The motivation is just to survive. Just to survive, not individually, but like for the species to survive.
Yes,
right.
That's true. I mean, we don't see a lot of them, eating things.
Right.
Yeah,
well,
we don't.
I mean,
They kind of only exist in like very inhospitable climates. So I'm just confused about the, like, what I understand the life cycle. And I understand,
yeah,
that why they need to like harvest warm bodies for incubation. But then what? Like, they don't really ever eat the people. Like,
they do eat. Like, Kenny, was it called Donut? The story from
I don't remember if
Morsel?
that was the name, but that's what I call it because I am a donut is the line I remember.
Right. Morsel maybe was
Morsel.
anyway,
I think it was called Morsel. Yeah.
One of the Black, White, and Blood shorts was this woman who ultimately gets surrounded by xenomorphs, and sort of the implication there is that they're trying to like get her fear to spike because it'll make her taste better when they finally eat her. I think when their numbers are strong, they do a lot more eating versus just trying to survive. Like in this section, right, they talk about the dead sleep had gone on too long. Some had withered and reached a true death. They say there was still food in the older places, the desiccated remains of the creatures that had died long ago. So they're sort of like scavenging off of the dead, the Drukathy to survive. And like between doing that and then sort of hibernating for extended periods of time, they've been able to survive all of these centuries. And now that there's new people around, they can
make
start
reference
breeding
in it
again.
also that they come out at night. Basically, they go up to the surface at night.
Mostly.
And that threw me off because I was like, oh, well, then why are they? They can kind of like take over any human outpost. They could overrun that easily. Like, why bother staying underground if they need a food source? Like,
well, they were buried in this for a long time, I don't know. I think they were just weak enough that they knew like we can't just go out and like take over this colony, right? But now that they're coming to us, we can breed, sort of replace our lost numbers, and then we can go have a buffet.
that makes sense.
That's my reading of it anyway. But you're right. I don't think we see them eating people enough. We see we saw the when there's one, we see him eat a lot more, right? Like in Alien 3, the canine alien, the runner, we see that guy just like chowing down on somebody at some point.
Yeah, and I think that's the first time in the movies we ever actually saw it eat any of the things that it killed. Up until that point, it was primarily depicted as killing like for sport or just because it like wanted to. I don't think it was actually killing for sustenance. I don't think they were specifically showing us it killing for sustenance until
so that would make sense with Decker getting the heat. I mean the hate waves, mental, receiving the signal of like, I feel hate emanating from them, and they just want to kill. Like that makes sense for that, but I was struggling to understand. They're complex enough to have hate as an emotion, but I don't feel like I understand what they're doing there otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's the only emotion that they have. I
Yeah,
guess
probably.
hate and maybe a little bit of fear, but even now when the destroyer is there, they're not like afraid.
Right.
They're like, we got to kill this.
Yeah,
motherfucker,
they're
right?
mad at him. Yeah. I think mainly what it is I'm under the impression that I think the Drukathi had a bunch of xenomorphs with them, and then their ship crashed on this planet, and it got buried. And so the reason the xenomorphs are there is because they got forcibly brought there and then trapped there when the ship got buried underground.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think so. I think that makes sense. I want to talk a little bit about my favorite Aliens video game moment. When we're on the subject of feeding, and I know we've talked about this before, but Bob, maybe you're not familiar with Aliens versus Predator 2 for the PC.
I have not played it.
There's 3 campaigns. There's the Xenomorph campaign, the Predator campaign, and the Marine campaign, right? And if you play the Alien campaign, you start as a face hugger, you hatch, right? And you have to crawl around this settlement, right, or this colony or something. You have to like climb through the vents and stuff like that, right, until you find an isolated target that you can then face hug. Then you switch to the chest burster and have to bite your way out of that person's chest. And then you can't crawl on the walls and stuff like that now, or through the vents like you could so much as the face hugger. You have to like sneak around and not get caught because you're like small and vulnerable until you find enough food to eat to grow into a full xenomorph. And that food is a cat in a kennel that you have to track down and eat.
Oh.
And then you become a full-grown xenomorph after that.
Interesting. Well, first you become a weirdest looking condom I've ever seen, as referenced in the audio drama, when they shed their skin to become the adolescent.
Wow, I don't think that was in the book.
It was not. No,
Kenny was that. Okay.
It was not.
They find the sloughed off skin of the chest burster.
Welcome to Team Expendable. I am weirdest looking condom you've ever seen, Hallstrom.
Speaking of which, though, let's see. We cut back to the comms team. They're wrapping up Colleen's body, and that's when they piece together that her wound is not a bullet wound, but something breaking out of her body. Then Dr. Nigel Silas, which is, again, a name I just like to say because it's very funny, starts doing an autopsy on the dead facehugger they found.
Sure.
Then it cuts to what I've referred to as the tunnel team in my notes, which is like Decker and Adams and Manning in them. Yeah. And Decker gets another brain blast, and he, that tells him that there are xenomorphs coming. They get attacked by one, and then as they're fighting it off, they get attacked by another one from behind them. So they get like pincer attacked, and they end up killing one of them and fleeing into another tunnel. And as they flee, there is like a cutaway to some more xenomorph viewpoint stuff where, again, nothing really happens. It's just like fluff. And
this was hold on, this chapter where with Decker and Adams, the team is kind of holding their own. They sort of like keeping the xenomorphs at bay, and until a bunch of them show up from behind them, and now everything's gone to shit, and like it's gone dark in there, and Adams like pulls Decker, and they like make their escape.
Yeah,
and like the chapter ends with they have done the unthinkable. They left the rest behind.
Yeah, this is the one where Decker's like, they're coming out from there, and everyone's like, that's just a blank wall. And then suddenly it swings open like a hinge, and xenomorphs come out, and they fire. And then the group comes from behind them and they fire some more. And then, like you said, Decker and Adams and Manning and a couple other people manage to find an opening and flee. And everyone else in there is still fighting the xenomorphs. And Manning's like, son of a bitch.
Yeah, so they knew they had no choice. It was a tactical retreat, et cetera, but just still... they just left them. They just fucking left them, man. And then this next section with more of the xenomorph flavor text is when it says 3-fingered hands and 6-fingered hands grab the bodies and drag them toward the birthing chamber. So I like that they point out like the hands, basically. At one point we were going to count fingers in things, Kenny.
Yeah, we were.
Because we noticed that like was it in
some of them, sometimes the artist
Outbreak.
Forgets and gives them normal human 5-fingered hands. Yeah.
Yeah, but we know that these have 3-fingered hands and 6-fingered hands, so I'll add it to the list.
But yeah, then we get the scene that happens in basically every single piece of Alien media when a character figures out their life cycle and monologues it to everyone else, even though we, the reader, already know what their life cycle is and do not need to have a section in the book where we're actively told it. You can just skip over that. It's fine.
I have a hypothetical for you guys,
right.
both of you. Bob, pretend you know nothing about the xenomorph life cycle, okay?
This is the first time I've ever heard about this.
All right.
Flawless.
You got a dead body. Okay. You got a dead human body with a cavity wound. You've got this spider-looking thing that somebody told you had been wrapped around its head and then fallen off. And you've got a different xenomorph that really doesn't resemble the face hugger at all, a large one that's just laying on the ground there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Would you be able to put the life cycle together?
I think so. I mean, it's not a
Like
complicated, like, I feel like it makes logical sense, just for step by step.
What about you, Kenny? You've got these 3 separate pieces, right?
If I'm in the context of this story, in that I also have the additional information of, like, you know, what Nigel had told them about what was happening to Colleen and all that, I do think I'd probably be able to piece it together. Yeah. I mean, this is just pregnancy, except they give birth through their chest. That's basically is just what it is.
Okay, then why the fuck does it take everyone in these stories so fucking long to figure it out?
And see, my thing of it is that, like, I'm not even necessarily, I'm like, oh, here we go, somebody figuring out the life cycle yet again. It's like, but we don't need to have a scene in the story of them figuring it out. You can just gloss over that part. We don't need to be told what it is. We already know what the creature's life cycle is. You can just skip over that part. It's fine. But no story ever does. Every single Alien story always has the scene where somebody tells us, the reader, what it is. We already know, dog. We don't need to be told this.
So I'm bringing it up because I am kind of exhausted at how often we have to go through the life cycle in every single piece of media, basically.
For sure.
Right? I mean, I doubt that Sea of Sorrows, book 2 in the Shadow Trilogy, is somebody's first Alien thing ever. But I suppose it could be, and it's good to get them caught up, and somebody might have been genuinely surprised by this. I'm with you guys. Like, it does seem pretty self-explanatory, and you have all of these pieces together, you'd be able to be like, oh, this thing must have come out of there, and that thing must have put it there in the first place. I get it. In this, I'm giving it a pass here, though, ultimately, because this was information withheld from the mercenaries by Weyland-Yutani, right? So they weren't expecting this at all, So this was less about telling us what it is, but more about showing the mercenaries figuring out what's going on, which is a piece of the puzzle, right, of the Weyland-Yutani puzzle in the context of the story. But well, it also just frustrated me. Like, this was really sloppy the way they were like, oh, she must have gotten shot even though none of us had weapons. Whatever. Like, they should have figured it out sooner, is what I'm saying. Like, you see the thing on her face and then suddenly she has a gaping chest wound. You should be able to put 2 and 2 together, at least as far as that goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So, I don't know. But these are just fucking dumb grunts, right?
That's right. Speaking of dumb grunts, we got 4 people: Vogel, the scientist, Nigel, Perkins, and Willis, get into a truck and head out around to the other side of the ship to try to connect with those mapping drones that they like haven't gotten a signal on, and they think that the ship is blocking the signal, so they drive out to the other side of the ship, and wouldn't you know it, it immediately connects and they download all of the information from the drones because they've still been mapping out everything this entire time, even though they haven't been receiving the signal. And because of that, they have almost a full and complete map of both the city and the inside of the ship, and using that, somehow the doc finally pieces together that the entire Drukathi city was wiped out by xenomorphs, and they're here waiting to do the same thing to all of us.
Again, just a little bit behind the ball on these things, aren't they? I don't know. I know this team has been separated and they haven't been seeing all of the stuff that's been going on, you know, and haven't been in communication with the teams inside the ship, right? Mm-hmm. But they just, I don't know. I don't think Nigel Silas is particularly smart.
Well, he doesn't seem to be a biologist. He seems to be an archaeologist. So I'm not surprised he wasn't able to put it together right away, I suppose.
All right.
I guess. Enough. I don't know. And then the scene ends with them hearing somebody off in the distance screaming real loud.
Hey, Bob, what are your thoughts on science and doctors?
Look, I think a lot of the stuff you can just, what comes from the earth naturally, like crystals and essential oils, is kind of all we need for medicine.
That's right.
Yeah, things that, you know, Mother Earth gave us.
So,
totally.
Bob, speaking of which, how do you feel about masking and vaccinations?
Hey, all right, how much time do you got?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not a good feeling for when you're reading something to just be like, all right, keep going. Like I get it. Like I know exactly what's happening here. Like get to the part where I'm going to be surprised by something.
Yeah.
We know that the Drukathi got killed off by the xenomorphs. You guys can get to the point faster.
Yeah.
You've got some chapters in here that are a page long, and then this one is several pages and doesn't need to be.
Yeah,
and like I get you have to put something on the page.
I was playing a Phoenix Wright game the other day, and I had that similar feeling of I was playing through the game, and I was like, all right, I know what piece of evidence I have to present and what line of dialogue I have to present. I have to use that piece of evidence on, but I have to play through the game to wait until the game allows me to do it, to be able to do it. Like I got there before the game wanted me to.
Yes.
That's the same thing that's happening in this book. Like we're piecing this together before the characters do, and we just have to kind of keep reading the book and wait for the characters to catch up, you know?
I got good news for you. When it's a book, you can just turn a few pages.
You can.
You don't have to read them all.
You can.
Which is what I did in these chapters when I was like, okay, they figured out the face. I go, okay, they figured out the Druk. All right. I skimmed it and I moved on. But you have tapped into another layer of my I don't like video games that waste my time deal, which is like I know the thing I need to do. Just let me do the thing. Don't make me wait until the game wants me to do the thing.
Look, I'm not really in the mood to get into a real argument about this, but since you brought it up, I have to say it is so insane to me that you're like, I hate it when games waste my time at the beginning of the game before stuff gets into it. Like, motherfucker, your favorite game is Persona 4, which takes an hour and a half of cutscenes until you finally start to play it, dog.
Hey, Kenny, guess how long it's taken me to get through that hour and a half since I decided to play that game again. Like a week, because it was wasting my fucking time.
Yet it's still somehow like one of your favorite games ever made.
Sure. The truth is, I think that there is a way to skip all of that, like just skip the events, you know? And I wouldn't let myself do it, but I should have.
But anyway, speaking of flipping pages and waiting for stuff to catch up, good news. We're on the final chapter of this section of the book. We find...
Bob, why don't you tell us how this wraps up?
Yeah, what happens in the final chapter, Bob?
don't make me, because I don't know where it ends.
Okay.
The audio drama is sequentially not the same as the book, so I'm not sure what chapter this is.
Fair enough.
Bob in high school, Bob rented the movie a lot.
We find out that the scream that ended the chapter is at the beginning of this chapter. We find out it's from a character named Lutz, and he's screaming because he was checking Piotrowicz's like acid burns on his face, and then the not fully grown chest burster, so not quite a drone, was hiding in the shadows. And when Lutz happened to have his hand away from Piotrowicz's face, the chest burster went out and bit his hand off.
It bit his fucking hand
Yeah,
off.
it didn't bite his hand. It bit his hand off. And he went, yikes. And that's the scream that everyone else heard. And
He also gets stabbed in the chest, right?
He will, yes.
And
a lot of people will, I think.
Yeah, it's still, it's like kind of in the in-between between a burster and a full-size drone. It's not a drone yet, and it's described
it's
as
like
about
tall.
3 feet tall, give or take.
Adorable. First of all, fucking adorable. I was picturing this thing, and I was like, I want this. I could train one.
I
right?
wrote R.I.P. Lutz because I believe at that point he like goes into shock and passes out, and then just as it's about to kill Piotrowicz, the other group that was like with Willis and them in last chapter turns around the corner and sees it and knocks it off of him and kills it. And then we find out that Lutz isn't actually dead, he's just in a coma. But spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure he's dead by the time the book ends, so I'm pretty sure he dies eventually, just apparently not right now.
I love, and the little juvenile xenomorph gets smashed by a rifle.
Yeah.
That is described as a grunt's wet dream.
I believe it was a Vogel that smashed it, knocked it down onto the ground, and then unloaded like 5 or 6 rounds into it, and then it just kind of popped.
This rifle that is described as a grunt's wet dream is called a pounder.
Yeah, it is. Yes, that is correct.
This is a horny book.
Well, only if you want it to be.
Well,
all I had to do was choose not to interpret it that way.
okay. Well, just
Neil.
side note, there were chapters where it was talking about when it was Detilio getting face hugged, where it was just talking about this thing thrusting down his throat, and just the language it was using was very Archive of Our Own,
Which I assume is on purpose, yes.
And then, but the guy talking about how he gets laid more than his sister, and I'm just saying.
I'm sure you are.
The guy fingering a man he loves and respects, Anyway, back to the
Also, Jan was a little horny on the last novel too, on Original Sin.
You're right.
Yeah.
No, these
Kind
are
of a running theme with alien novelists.
There was a moment early, I think it was when we were reading Alien Covenant Origins. There's your reference. For
Here
the
we go,
episode,
baby. All right, let's hear it.
All right.
where like someone went to like a strip club, where they were talking about like a brothel or something, and I was like, this guy. I think I wisely cut this out of the episode, because the truth is I don't actually want to know the answers. But I was like, how horny do these things get? And it turns out they can get pretty horny. Like I think in the recent Alien versus Predator game for like 360 and PlayStation 3, there is a part where you go to there is a strip club like left behind on the planet.
I believe it was a strip club in Covenant Origins as well.
Also, okay. I don't know.
Aliens versus Predator game torrent right now.
All right, let's talk about this book, though.
Yeah, because again, listeners, that was the end of the last chapter we're covering, so that is the end of our coverage of this section of the book. So, guys, let's talk about it. What do you think?
Just real quick, I love how feral this juvenile xenomorph is. I love that I don't know, man. It's just like going wild out there. It reminded me of the Bloodbursters from Covenant.
Those guys rule, by the way. I love them.
When they're just like tearing into people,
Yeah,
like
hell
not
yeah.
even giving a fuck or trying to survive, even though they're like little tiny things,
I
just thought that this part was very cool. This I like that the guy just like reaches for something, and this thing just out of the shadows bites his hand off, and then suddenly is this like a cornered animal. It's just like attacking everyone around and doing a pretty fucking good job of hurting people until it gets clocked in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was a fun chapter.
There's a lot of cool ideas here. I think there's stuff that isn't in every other piece of Alien media, which is interesting. But then the downsides are all of the things that are in every other Alien media.
Yeah, I think just like cutting around all these different groups, a lot of the gunfights and stuff, it does feel kind of generic Alien. I do think it was presented fairly well in this, even if it does get confusing trying to keep track of who's in which group. But like each one kind of had a touchstone character. You could sort of like, you know, okay, we're Detilio, we're with his group. Okay, we're with Decker, you know. Oh, we're with whoever the comms team is. So that helped, but I mean, it still got a little messy. It was still fun to read, though. I do think that this might be my favorite of the trilogy, but it's also the only one not trying to force its way into already existing continuity.
Right. I think that's probably why it seems like it's a lot better.
On the Xenopedia article for this, it mentions that originally 20th Century Fox wanted this book to ignore the events of Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, but then they later changed their mind, and so James A. Moore had to kind of alter the book to fit within the events of the later movies, which is probably how Decker became the descendant of Ripley 8 instead of just Ripley, so maybe his empath abilities were presented a little bit differently.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Because that's also something I was wondering. I mean, we don't actually know what the changes of the book would have been if it did ignore 3 in Resurrection. But, like, if it did, how would they explain his empath abilities as being a descendant of regular Ellen? Like, him being a descendant of Ripley 8 makes more sense in that scenario because she did already have an empathic connection to the Xenos. So if he's just like a descendant of regular Ellen who didn't have that, how would they explain where he got these abilities?
I mean, maybe he didn't have them at all. Maybe just because he was an expert on the mining colony, they would have sent him in or something. But I think also, like, you could make the case, because there's some other, like, psychic shit has popped up, right? Like, I'm remembering correctly that it was in Outbreak.
Yeah,
right?
He's not the first character to be psychic and Alien, yeah.
And, of course, Duncan Fields having his visions of the xenomorphs in Alien
I can't
Covenant
believe
Origins.
you had to force a Covenant Origins reference in a few minutes ago when one just naturally cropped up now. That kind of sucked. If you had just waited, you would have gotten one on a platter laid down right in front of you.
The point is, I think he could have just been an empath. And again, maybe it just would have been more general low-level psychic ability versus stuck to the
That's
xenomorphs. So, but I would be interested in what that version was. Ultimately, I'm glad that this gets to reference the things in Alien Resurrection. I think it makes more sense.
For sure.
And James A. Moore was like happy to do that because, you know, his quote here, I'm going to put him on blast. I was happy to add them back in because as flawed as the movies might be, I like parts of both. I think Alien 3 is pretty bulletproof.
I have gone on record before. I think Alien 3 is good. So
yes. And of course, Bob's favorite movie is Alien Resurrection. That's why he wants to do all of these.
Yeah, that's why we had him on for all the Resurrection stuff. He's like, I'm a fucking freak for Alien Resurrection.
I was begging.
I read your newborn fan fiction on.
So did I,
AO3.
and let me say, not quite fanfic, more like slash fic. Am I right?
Oh, hey-o. I'm getting busy with the newborn. Let me see that skull.
I'm going to clip that out of context. But yeah, seriously though, I also thought this section of the book was pretty cool. It has both my favorite and least favorite parts of this novel. There's a couple of scenes where they're getting attacked by xenomorphs that I think is genuinely really like cool, very interestingly described, very cinematic in my brain when I read it. But it's also the part where it's like a fucking man, this joke would have been so much funnier if I would have been able to actually remember the name I was trying to pull out of my head. But it's very like slapstick, like Three Stooges style comedy almost, of like a group of characters just running back and forth from one spot to another over and over again. Like
Scooby-Doo.
That's not the name I was trying to pull, but that's also a good reference. But yeah, it's just there were parts of it that I thought were lame. The characters just staying in that one area, running back and forth over and over. There were also other scenes I think were cool. And like when they cut away from like the main group of like Decker and Manning in them, and when they cut away to the other stuff, we see all these other characters. And then every single time they also inevitably get attacked by xenomorphs. After like the third time it happens, it's very funny, let's admit. So, this section of the book is fun, and while I was reading it, the stuff that happened in section 1 started to come back to me, and so, I think this was fun. I think it was pretty cool. Some good action, lots and lots of xenomorphs, which I'm not always a fan of, but in this specific scenario, I think I'm fine with it, and so overall, I'm giving it a thumbs up.
Nice. Lots and lots of xenomorphs, but they're not just sort of swarming, right? They're still using like stalking tactics and things like that, which makes it interesting. You know, it's sort of like the first scene in Aliens when they go down into the reactor and you just see the xenomorphs start like peeling out of the walls and stuff. It's got more of that vibes versus later on in Aliens where they're just swarming into the rooms and stuff. And I appreciate that. Bob, listening to the audio drama, what are your thoughts of that?
I like it. This section has been, I mean, obviously very repetitive.
Yeah.
But all of the stuff that it's sprinkling in that are like new ideas or like filling out some lore that is interesting, I'm really enjoying. Like we were saying before, everything that, explaining the life cycle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I
just hit that 30-second forward button.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I mean the empath stuff is interesting. The Weyland Yutani like lore is interesting. I like it's much more fun than Original Sin was. It's probably my favorite thing that isn't a movie that I've consumed.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
I think if they had lost one team, this would have gone better, right?
Just as in lost as in like just not had one of them exist in the narrative at all. Like if they shrunk the groups down by one, it would work better.
Oh,
okay.
Sure. I agree with that.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, who knows, maybe that's how it was. And he had to like add another team because it was just getting too, I don't know, for pacing reasons or whatever. But yeah, while reading this, I was getting mixed up about which team was where and who was on which team, just enough for me to be like, I wish this was a little bit more consolidated.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But otherwise, I really dug this, and I'm looking forward to finishing this off. It sounds like we know some of the things that are going to happen in part 3. Maybe a little mischievous boy named Ash is going to show up in a computer somewhere.
Maybe.
Right? Yeah. Or I don't know. Maybe not.
We'll find out.
Looking forward to knocking the last third of this book out. Might start reading it tonight. I'm not gonna, guys. I'm not, but I am gonna finish listening to the audio drama. I think that, like you were saying, Bob, those are very fun. I'm a big fan of those, and I haven't listened to this one enough. So
yeah, it's good.
Should we wrap it up?
Sure.
All right, Bob, plug your stuff one more time.
Flock podcast at workatmydadslawfirm.com. That's a podcast about, stuff. And Friday nights on Twitch, twitch.tv.com/respectable street. I'm always up to something.
That's
true. Come watch Bob's friends bully him in his chat.
Yeah, we don't have to bully me at all. Even we can just hang out there and have fun.
It's fine if we don't, honestly. So let's just kind of chill, guys.
I was just more meaning like spending the channel points to turn you into a skeleton and stuff.
That's very
sure.
fun.
Yeah,
I
we can
like
do
doing
that.
that.
We don't have to complain about how small the stool I sit in is or anything like that.
Or how your hat always looks wet every week or whatever.
Yeah, we don't got to talk about anything like that.
I've honestly never noticed that part, but I don't tune in every week. So, but yeah, it's a fun time over there. Maybe be careful if you're prone to seizures caused by photosensitivity, but your mileage may vary.
That's true.
Kenny, where can people find you on the internet?
My handle is at CYHOBBEZ. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. I use my PSN a lot. I do a few other things. I'm on Steam. I have one friend on my friends list now on Steam, so I'm officially accepting friends on Steam now. I'm probably on a few other things that I don't use as much, but Twitter and Discord are really the main things, and you can find me at the handle I already mentioned. Neil.
I'm on the internet at Final Neil. That's Neil with an A. Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitch. Yeah, that's probably it. My Mortal Kombat show is still out there, MK Podquest, that I did with my friend Corey. We're not calling it quits yet, but it's basically over, guys. But there's a lot of episodes to go listen to, so go do that.
Yeah, my understanding is that you have like a handful of episodes left, and that's about it.
Including one that we recorded, I think around the time that we recorded part 1 of this that I just haven't gotten to yet. So that'll show up eventually. And I was recently on the Flock podcast, and I'm going to ask you guys not to listen to that one because I don't think I was doing a good job.
Personally, I mean, I listened to it when it came out, and listening to it and hitting play was how I found out that Neil was on that episode, and I think he did fine, personally. I have no qualms or issues or problems with his performance on it.
I don't think I was on my A game, but hey, it's out there. Go work at mydadslawfirm.com.
No comment. Neil, you did you're great on everything.
I'm not looking for compliments here. I'm just being vulnerable. Kenny, where can people find this show on the internet?
Blue Sky at Crew Expendable, Twitter at Crew Expendapod, Instagram and Threads at Crew Expendable Pod, website crewexpendable.net, email mother@crewexpendable.net, and finally youtube.com/@crewexpendable is our YouTube page.
We'll be back next episode, I think, to finish off Sea of Sorrows. Is that the book we're reading?
That's the book we're reading, yes.
Yes.
I still want to say River of Pain every time. So until then, stay frosty.
Stay frosty.
Thanks for flying with us.
Thanks for flying. Bye.